So, hello, story lovers. What's up, and welcome back to Africa Folktale with Neze. In the heart of southeastern Nigeria, in a village called Isiala Ngwa, palm trees swayed gently with the wind, and the air was filled with the sound of drums and the laughter of children. Isiala Ngwa was my home, a place of peace and community, where the earth was rich and the people worked hard. My name is Olachi, and this is my story. It is a story of courage, loss, and how we, the women of Aba, stood tall when the British tried to take away what was ours. In 1861, the British came to Nigeria. They started in Lagos and gradually spread their control over the whole land. At first, their presence seemed distant, like a story told by travelers, but as the years passed, their influence grew. They imposed their rules and laws, disregarding our ways and traditions. They took control of the land, declaring it a colony, and in 1914, they joined northern and southern regions of Nigeria, amalgamating them under one British rule, without even considering the obvious dissimilarities in cultures and religion. They only cared about their selfish economic interests. With their rule came taxes, and soon life became harder for everyone. By the 1920s, the British had placed men from our villages as warrant chiefs, a system they created to lord over us indirectly. These chiefs were not chosen by their people. They were not voted into on the strength of their characters. They were chosen and imposed on us by the British. These warrant chiefs enforced the colonial laws, collected taxes, and turned a blind eye to the suffering of their own people. I still remember my father's face, worn with worry, as he paid the heavy taxes that the British demanded. Olachi, he would say to me and my sister Wugo, these taxes are breaking our backs. To make things worse, the British took away the rights of women to speak in councils and make decisions for the community. Before the British came, women in many villages had strong voices. They could hold meetings, settle disputes, and make sure that the community was cared for. But the British pushed the women aside, ignoring the old ways and imposing their own male-dominated systems of governance. With no voice or power, the women grew frustrated. They could no longer protect their families or speak up when things were unfair. So in time, anger grew. The men were struggling under the weight of these taxes. But we, the women, still found ways to assist them carry their burden, as well as keep our families going. We traded in the market, worked in the fields, grew crops, and took care of our homes. My sister Wugo and I, like many other young women in the village, helped our parents with the harvest. Wugo, my sister, was very bold, always speaking out against injustice, while I preferred to listen and learn. She would often say, Olachi, for how long will we continue like this? One day, things would change. We will make sure of that. And then in 1929, our worst fears came true. We had heard rumors for weeks that the British planned to tax the women next. Women in our village had never been taxed before. We were the backbone of the community, and the thought of paying taxes on top of everything else was just unbearable. The British didn't understand that we were the ones keeping the village alive. How could they take from us too? It was early on the morning of November the 18th when Emeruwa, a warrant chief, came to the house of Wanyiruwa, a widow in Oloko. Wanyiruwa's husband, Ojem, had passed on, leaving her to manage the household alone. Emeruwa, under orders to count people, animals and goods for the British census, approached her and said, "Count your goats, sheep, and all your people." Now, in Igbo tradition, women were not taxed, so Wanyiruwa understood his words to mean that the British had planned to tax her. Her anger boiled over. "Did they count your widowed mother?" she shot back, her words thick with defiance. The two argued, and in his fury, Emeruwa grabbed her by the throat. Oh, shaken but unbowed, Wanyiruwa stormed to the town square, where the women were already gathered, speaking of this new British tax on their households. Hearing Wanyiruwa's account, the women's anger spread like wildfire. To call for support, they sent out pamphlets to nearby villages in Bende, Umahia, and Ngwa. She called the women together, and we met in secret, far from the eyes of the British soldiers and their chiefs. "The men are already suffering," Wanyiruwa said, her voice steady and filled with determination. "We will not allow them to tax us too, not after they have stripped us of our place and our voice in our own community. We must fight back." Umwugo was the first from Isiala Ngwa to stand beside her. "We are not just women. We are the strength of this land," she shouted, her voice echoing through the group. I felt fear in my heart, but Wugo's bravery gave me courage. I stood with them, knowing that we could not let the British take what little we had left. We had to do something, and we had to do it fast. And so on November the 23rd, 1929, the women of Aba, including many from Isiala Ngwa and other southeastern regions, gathered. We gathered at Oloko. We came out in our thousands. We came from villages all around, and we convened with one strength. Our voices rising like the storm, we were ready, and we marched in protest. We chanted and we sang. We carried palm fronds as a symbol of peace, but we were ready to fight. Ikonia, Nwanedia, and my elder sister Wugo led the protests. Always at the front, she shouted, "We will not be taxed. We will not be silenced." The British didn't understand our power. They didn't know that when women decide to stand up, we cannot be stopped. We marched to the homes of the warrant chiefs, the men who had betrayed us for their own selfish gain. Oh, we tore down their doors and we broke their windows and we dragged them to the streets. Some of the chiefs who had turned their backs on their people were beaten and killed by the enraged women. Instant justice had come to those who had caused us so much suffering. Then the British soldiers came. They arrived with guns and bayonets, determined to stop us. We had no weapons, but we had something stronger: our courage. I remember the fear in my heart as the soldiers lined up in front of us. But Wugo stood tall, her voice ringing out like a bell. "We are not afraid," she cried. "We fight for our children, for our future, for our rights." I stood beside her, trembling but determined. The soldiers raised their guns, and before I could blink, the air was filled with the sound of gunfire. Instinctively, I ducked behind a tree, my heart pounding in my chest. They began firing at us. In the twitch of an eye, one of their bullets hit my sister. I felt my life fade as I watched her fall to the ground, groaning in pains in what was her last moments. The grief that followed was like a heavy fog over our village. Over 50 women were killed, many were arrested, others fled into the forests. But we had made our stand. The British tried to silence us with their guns, but they couldn't erase the memory of what we had done. The chiefs who had betrayed us were gone, and though the price had been high, we had shown the British that we will not be cowed. For months after my sister's death, I was consumed by sorrow. The market felt empty without her voice, and every corner of the village reminded me of what we had lost. I took in her children, raising them as my own, but the weight of her absence was a burden I could hardly bear. One day, Nwanyeruwa came to visit me. She sat with me by the fire, her eyes filled with the same pain that I carried. "Olachi," she said softly, "Wogo's spirit is still with us. She fought for something greater than herself. Now, you must tell her story. You must tell our story." At first, I didn't know how to speak. How could I find the words to honor my sister's bravery, to explain the pain of losing her? But slowly, I began to understand that our fight, Wugo's fight, was not just for that moment. It was for all the women who would come after us, so that they would know that we stood up and that we resisted. From that day on, I became the village storyteller. I would gather the children around the fire and tell them about the Ogu Umuwani, the Aba Women's Riot of 1929. How their mothers and grandmothers had challenged oppression, had marched boldly in defiance of the British. And always, I will tell them about Wogo. "We are not afraid," she had said, even as the British raised their guns. Now, I tell the story so that you will remember we, the women of Isiala Ngwa, and all the villages of Aba, the Igbo women, the Ibibios, the Andonis, the Ogonis, the Efik, the Ijors, how these women stood firm, stood against the might of the British Empire. We fought for our rights, for our dignity, and for our future. The spirits of those women, the spirit of my sister, will live on forever. Dear story lovers, the true tale of the Aba Women's Riot reminds us of the incredible courage and strength of women standing up for what is right. These women, once told that they had no voice or power, gathered their courage to challenge the unfair rules placed upon them. Together, they showed that women are bold, fearless, and more than capable of challenging wrongs in their societies. The moral of this story is clear. Women, no matter the obstacles, have the strength to speak up against injustice. Their unity, bravery, and determination to protect their families, to protect their traditions, are examples of how powerful voices can inspire change and restore fairness. This story teaches us that when women stand together, they can shape a better world for themselves and for future generations. Please, do not let anyone convince you otherwise. Do let us know down in the comment section, what are the take home for you? So dear story lovers, if you're new here, you're hearing my voice for the first time, or if you've been watching without subscribing, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, drop all your comments down in the comment section, and stay glued, for we have so much more coming your way. It's Africa Folktale with Neze, and I'll see you in our next story. For now, bye.